Wall Street Journal reporting that the U.S. has intercepted a troubling communication connected to the crisis in Syria. It suggests that any kind of U.S. involvement in this ongoing civil war could trigger an attack on our interests. Iran now apparently ordering militants in Iraq to attack the U.S. embassy and other facilities in Baghdad. And this only adding to a growing list of retaliation threats that are coming from across the region. Pete Hegseth is an Army reservist who served in Iraq and is CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. Pete, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
This is a troubling report that the Wall Street Journal is reporting this morning that they have intercepted these communications from Iran. Not surprising, but scary.
Yeah, troubling, but not surprising. Syria has long been a proxy for Iran. And so Iran sees Syria as sort of the first trench in anything that's engulfing them. So they're going to do whatever they can to prevent, deter any action, international action, U.S. action in this particular case, as big or small as it might be, and use all their assets available, which are Hezbollah proxy forces in Lebanon, their Quds force, which has always been projected outward. Quds force, by the way, means Jerusalem force, if we need to be reminded about where their actual focus is. Because from Tehran, in order to get to Israel, you've got to go through Baghdad, Damascus, and Beirut, Syria and Lebanon. So that connection is very important to Iran, and they're going to do whatever they can to send signals that any aggression on Syria is an aggression on Iran.
So in other words, well beyond Baghdad, we need to be worried about retaliation everywhere if the U.S. strikes.
Absolutely.
But isn't that always part of the calculus of our commanders? Don't they always recognize that there could be some sort of retaliatory attack for whatever action we take?
Of course. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. It's the first thing you're taught. So if we can send a missile strike into Syria, it's going to have a ripple effect. And I think Iranian play here and Syria's is to demonstrate that ripple effect is going to be so unpalatable for the United States that we don't want to get involved. There's obviously some bluffing involved here. Some forces have said we're going to eradicate Israel. Israel will deal with threats because of an action precisely because of their geographic proximity. But I don't think this is going to be the trigger for an absolute stand down with Israel. But we'd better be prepared for Hezbollah to react toward Israel. We'd better be prepared in Damascus, not in Damascus, in Baghdad and elsewhere in our embassies across that region and around the world, where Hezbollah is not just involved in the Middle East. They've got cells throughout Europe and elsewhere, so they could and they've had time, Alison. That's the thing. When you signal what you're going to do and then you wait for congressional action, Iran and Syria are able to plot and plan what they do next.
We are, I guess, in preparation, pulling out staffers from different embassies. Is that the kind of preparation you're talking about?
Well, that's the preparation we've been doing for months now, pulling out, drawing back, stepping back, not projecting strength. And that's the big problem here. We look weak across the board. We're planning to pull out.
So what can we be doing?
Well, what we should be doing, we can't, it's tough to back it up at this point. At this point, this president has drawn a red line that's not a red line, and now he wants to lob, but he's not willing to do more. So we've equivocated and sent weak signals from the very beginning that are reverberating now. My opinion is a small strategic strike to preserve credibility that red lines matters, pretty important, but you better be careful about ensuring you don't get drawn into a regional war and you're prepared to deal with it.
How do you do that?
I don't have the exact answer. And I'm the first to admit that that's an incoherent position. And the president has created the situation where even those who want to back him because his credibility is our credibility are in an untenable position because he's been so erratic and incoherent in dealing with these threats. He doesn't even want to call them threats, yet he wants to lob missiles into Syria. And that's why we look so weak. And Iran, and by the way, Russia and Putin have an upper hand in this geopolitical chess game in which right now, unfortunately, the United States seems to be losing.
But just the fact that Iran is making these noises and threatening retaliation, that can't be a reason for us not to do it.
Of course not. Of course not. It needs to be a calculation, and as a commander-in-chief, the president would need to stand up and say, when we do X, Y, and Z may happen, and we have to be prepared for that, which is going to make his case to Congress, which already looks like potentially a no vote, even more difficult because everyone wants the quick, easy war. And by the way, there is no such thing as a quick, easy war.
Why not? Why can't we just lob Tomahawk missiles from our destroyers in the region and take out some of the chemical weapons warehouses?
We can, and we probably will. I think that's likely what we'll do, and we'll stand back. But, a good example of why that doesn't always work is Libya. If you look at Libya today, it's controlled by rebels. It's controlled by Islamists. We tried to break it without having to own it afterwards. And when you create that vacuum, bad things happen. Syria is even more complicated because you've got Iranian-backed Assad on one side, and Iran is threatening actions, and al-Qaeda-backed rebels on the other. Who do we want to support, and how do we want to tip that balance? It's not clear, and that's why this doesn't cut across clear partisan lines in Congress as well.
The laws of unintended consequences are always in play. Pete Hegseth, thanks so much. Always great to have your insight.
Fox News contributor and for Middle East analyst Waleed Farez. Waleed, it's good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shep.
What we keep hearing from our leaders is if we don't strike, the likelihood is high that Assad will use his chemical weapons again. What we don't hear about, and they won't discuss, is the potential for escalation that could come with a strike. If you would, lay out the scenarios that you see as very real.
Absolutely, that's the hidden mountain in the room. What would Syrian regime do? What would Hezbollah do? And we heard the report right now. More importantly, Shep, what would Iran do, and not just in Syria, but in the entire region? Let me begin quickly by Syria. The Syrian regime, if it gets a strike, a no-killer strike, meaning a limited one, they will definitely try to rebuild those weapon systems with the Russians, number one. Number two, they will attack Sunni areas inside Syria to preempt the opposition from coming to Damascus and taking over. And three, we've seen that in the past 10 to 15 years, a series of assassinations, attempt or strikes inside Lebanon against politicians who are against the Syrian regime. So Syria's regime will retaliate, and probably, as we heard now the report about the threat against the U.S. embassy in Baghdad, Syrian intelligence, Iranian intelligence, and Hezbollah will definitely have a list of targets, of U.S. targets to reply against.
So you're concerned that attacks would happen not just in the region but around the world as a result of our strike on Syria?
Look, the war rooms of Iran, of Syria, of Hezbollah have done rehearsals of these virtual rehearsals in the sense that they know exactly what will be the steps depending on the kind of attack. If the attack is very limited, and I agree with the report, I don't think that they're going to retaliate big time. But if the attack is going to allow for the opposition to shake off the foundation of the regime, Iran, my friend, may retaliate as far as the Gulf, threatening the economic route for gas and petrol from the Gulf to the world. So this could become much bigger than one would think in a limited strike.
A strike on the Straits of Hormuz?
Yes, the Iranians have been, if you go back to archives, Chef, you will see that the Iranians have been threatening this, but we have not heard them. I mean, our media did not register what they've said 1 year and 2 years ago. Any attack against Syria will mobilize Iran against the allies of America. And we thought that the only ally they're going to retaliate against would be Israel. Yes, that could be the case, but there are other allies, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, of course, and even northern Yemen. So it could become much wider than just a triggering point in Syria.
You think anybody's saying these things to those who are leading us to war from the White House, or are they just all talking to each other?
Look, I don't know. I am pretty sure that our agencies have fine strategic analysts. They have this information. I have lectured to some agencies that I know what is their level. What I don't know are the briefers, the advisors to the White House and to the higher level of the Congress. What is the actual warning? I am not sure what it is.
Waleed Farah, Fox News contributor, Middle East analyst. Sir, thank you.
Thank you so much.